This is Dr. Cavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, we have Professor Drew, Professor Bishop, Professor Washington. Let's get into the top 7 poll rankings for the major division in week number 6 as we keep things going. Let's get in the top rankings as things have changed, and maybe they've not. Dropping out this week after we had a top 7 matchup, the Southern Jaguars took it to the chin, fighting in there, had to lead, but could not hold on at home. So they fall out of the polls and fall to 2-3, 2-1 on the season. Also falling out this week, Alcorn State Braves, even though they got the win, they could not get in the top 10 with everybody doing different things. 3-3 on the season, 2-1 this week. Receiving votes, Alcorn State Braves at 3-3, 2-1, 160 points, 65 points. Southern Jaguars, 2-3, 2-1, 154 points. Alabama A&M Bulldogs are 3-3, 1-2, 147 as they also fall out of the polls this weekend. Really tight in the top 7. Let's get into it. We have 2 teams that jump into the top rankings this week as we kind of see those teams at the bottom trading spots with wins on, wins off. We'll see if that clears up some things. At number 7, we have Prairie View and the Panthers. All right, 3-3, 3-1. Jump back in the poll this week, 174 points. At number 6, you have the Grambling State Tigers at 3-3. They fall a spot to 3-3 on the season, 2-1, as they stay in the top 7, even though they had a tough loss. At number 5, Hampton Pirates fall 2 spots this week as they fell as well, 3-2, 1-1, 187 points. At number 4, you have the Tennessee State Tigers. They were not ranked. They jumped back in the poll after they get a win this past weekend at 3-2, 1-1 on the season. Looking at the top 3, at number 3, Jackson State Tigers are 4-2, 2-1, 215 points. They move up a spot after they get a big neutral site victory over Alabama A&M, top 7 matchup, top 10 matchup last week, but they get it done. And number 2, North Carolina Central Eagles, 5-1, big victory, top 25 victory, but was not enough to squeeze out FAMU. They have 6 first-place votes, 245 points. Reign the number 2. They take one of the first-place points that came away from Hampton last week, but guess who got the other one? Number 1, Florida A&M Rattlers, 5-1, 4-0, 6 first-place votes, 246 points, just edging out North Carolina Central by 1 point. Some polls have Central number 1, some have FAMU. I wouldn't argue whatever way you go. I'll just be straight up with that before I even ask going to the rankings. It's just that tight of a race. It looks like these 2 teams are on a collision course to play in the Celebration Bowl. And boy, at this point, you talking about what could be a fascinating matchup. Can both teams hold on? It's probably more important that Central finishes the season now as they get in the conference race. Think about this, at 10-1, as FAMU may be able to bump their head and still get in. But could you think about this? You could have a 10-1 matchup versus a 11-1 matchup between the MEAC and SWAC. Both teams in the top 25. If they continue to win at that time, you talk about maybe 2 teams in the top 10. Certainly one of them just outside of it with that framework in terms of what it looks at. Obviously 1 and 2 in the poll rankings for everybody. It would be fascinating for that matchup, but there's still a lot to be played for. In terms of those teams out there, Southern says, hey, we might want a rematch. Alcorn State, the Braves says, we want our shot. We're going to go down the whole list in the West. Grambling says, hey, what about us? Prairie View says, hey, we'll take a homecoming shot, and then we'll take a do-over as well. Did I miss anybody? Texas Southern says, we're 0-2, but it's just stopped. We're just a game back. Let us start our trend on it. So, man, it's interesting. Jackson State is sneaking in the weeds, say, hey, mess around and find out. With that being said, what are your thoughts in terms of my top 7? Drew, I'm going to start with you.
All right. I'm going to do some math right here, Dr. Cavil. FAMU Central, both with 6 first-place votes. You mean somebody had the nerve not to give either FAMU or Central a 1 or a 2? Because that's the only reason that you would have a difference is somebody had to vote Central 3 on their ballot.
That's right.
I don't know who that was, Dr. Cavil, but you need to question what they were doing when they put that ballot in. That's all I'm going to say about that. Because, like you said, they're either one or two. Tomato is real subjective, but you can't argue with them. But for somebody who actually had the nerve to write 3 on their ballot, you need to question you need to question them, Dr. Cavil. Now,
I agree with you.
You say this is a week-to-week poll, Dr. Cavil. When I look at what's going on up here, 5 of your 7 teams won in your top 7. But the another team that won that's receiving votes barely received votes. They're technically number 10. How is Alcorn not in with a win over Grambling? But Hampton and Grambling are still in. Posters, help me out with that one. Explain that one. Not explain that to me. Y'all can have it now.
Charles, explain it.
I can't. I ain't even gonna try. But you know what? I'm sitting here laughing. I'm like, it's Florida A&M, it's North Carolina Central, and it's a whole muddle of folks right up under them. But the thing that I really take a look at, boy, we got a lot of football to play. I'm not ready to pencil either one of them into the Celebration Bowl just yet, because I just think that over October and November, we just gonna see a lot of shaking out that's gonna happen, and I got some interesting matchups. I mean, and on paper, it doesn't look like something that'll jump out at you, but FAMU making a trip to Houston to take on Texas Southern, to me, that's going to be an interesting game. I think when North Carolina Central gets into conference play, as great as they've looked thus far, I just feel like something weird is going to happen within MEAC play, because I think they just play good football. I think the margin of error is so thin going forward that it's just, you're just going to have a lot of things shake out. And let me big up Tennessee State. They're playing some good football. It's been a second or two since we watched Tennessee State play some really decent football. It's good to see them back in the mix, in the top 5 of things. But they got a guy that can tackle everything moving out there on the field. Moreau Beard, Draylon Ellis is playing, decent, competent quarterback play, and they run the ball. They're touching all the elements. So Tennessee State, I'm just keeping an eye on them with regards to what they're doing, and keep an eye on the Prairie View A&M Panthers. I keep saying it. Keep an eye on them. If they quit shooting themselves in the foot, they can be an explosive team.
Yeah, I watched it and looked at their stats when I was asking questions during the SWAC football media day of Coach McDowell. And it just came across that I was looking at their wide receivers. They had 6 wide receivers that caught balls, but their average pass between the receivers like 12 yards. And you've seen these plays of 20 yards, 30 yards, 35, 70 yards for a touchdown catch. And I was like, they not only do they spread it around, you can't just key on anybody, but if they get loose and when they do make passing plays, they are deep yardage. I mean, some of them are yards at the catch, some of them are down the field. So it's intriguing that you're right. If they can get some balance in terms of what that looks like, and this is not including that they can run the ball. So It's fascinating to kind of keep your eyes on it, and I don't think a lot of people are really paying attention to it. With that being said, let me go to you, Mike, to see if you can explain.
No, I cannot, and I agree with Mr. AD on some of his points.
Nobody wants to explain it.
There is no way to explain it. I think you got 1 and 2. That's it. I think for me, North Carolina Central, I don't want to call it, they're in the drive. They're really that truck you presented in our previous broadcast, and who's in the driver's seat. If there's any teams in the driver's seat, it's North Carolina Central. They are 2 teams up against the next team. Now they're getting into conference play. Who's going to get them? Howard? Morgan State? Yeah, Howard narrowly beat Northwest. But who's really going to stack up against them?
Hello, Orangeburg, South Carolina. Hi, South Carolina State.
I will give you South Carolina, yes. That's probably the only team that I'm looking.
And they trended up, Mike. So watch out for them.
Yeah, okay. So, I will say that. So I agree with AD's point on why Grambling is actually there. They lost. Why Alcorn State is not there. Yeah. And personally, I think North Carolina Central. You can make an argument. I personally think they should number one. If to be the champ, you got to beat the champ.
Yeah,
I'm just a fond believer in that.
Yeah.
And that SWAC West is going to go. We said it at the beginning. We said it at media day. That SWAC West, you're going to have folks moving up and down each week from this point on, depending on who they play. And CB, I echo your points about Prairie View A&M. If they can stop shooting themselves in the foot, making dumb mistakes, doing stuff that causes me to drink weird stuff, then yes, Prairie View does have a really good shot at it. So we'll see. This next half of the season, at least for the SWAC West, will be very, very interesting. I still want to put a data point. We saw kind of a little bit of vulnerability in FAMU. That southern line. Yeah. We saw some vulnerability. That we saw that Superman could bleed, basically. That southern line. That they did something with FAMU. Just mark that in quotations as a Bootsy data point right there. There's some vulnerabilities there.
The only thing is I'm not sure they're going to face another defensive front quite like Southern.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. I won't say that.
They got by Alabama State and Southern. Those probably the best two defensives out there.
In my opinion, no question in terms of what that looks like. To Charles's point, I want to put out there, you're right. The record may not reflect it, and people are really down on Howard because of the way they lost to Hampton, but we're seeing now that loss to Hampton may not be as bad as it looked in terms of the way it happened. And some of their losses to FBS, we know it doesn't necessarily translate, but they seem to be playing some good football and still has to travel to Howard this year. So that could be a little more interesting. We'll find out in a couple of weeks. They travel to Morgan State. I just don't think they have enough offense to get it done. Defense, they can at least muck it up and make it look close. And then South Carolina State, they seem to riding the ship and they playing coy like they always do. And I think they got to go back down there, Orangeburg. So you just never know. That's always a problem. I'm fascinated what that looks like.